Empire.
Welcome to Inside the Cap. I'm your host, Joel Corey. You can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel, CORRYJOEL. I also read my regular CBSSports.com column called Agents Take on NFL Contracts and Salary Cap Matters. This week, we're going to delve into two things. One, the ramifications of Ja'Waun James's Achilles injury, and also fifth-year options that had an exercise deadline of May 3rd. First, let's look at Ja'Waun James. The NFLPA dispute with the NFL over the existence of voluntary workout programs now has collateral damage, with Ja'Waun James tearing his Achilles tendon last week working out away from the team facility. The NFLPA had been advising players not to participate in the off-season workout programs. James reportedly had been working out at the Denver facility, and then the advice of the NFLPA decided not to. Not really sure why the NFLPA is fighting this one tooth and nail, the off-season workout programs, but it seems like some players didn't know what the complete ramifications were if he got hurt away from the facility, and the NFLPA didn't explain the pros and cons to them, and since they have a position they wanted to advance, they probably were downplaying the cons of the situation. That's an agent's responsibility as well, to discuss with his clients, okay, if you don't work out, this is at the facility, these are part of the ramifications. If you do, here's the pluses and the minuses. Explain and present that to your clients, and then let them make an informed decision as possible. That way you don't have guys like Patrick Mahomes tweeting that they can take his contract away just for working out. Now, when you get hurt away from the facility, that is probably the worst thing that can happen to you, particularly during the off season, because the team is not responsible for much anything. They can put you on the non-football illness injury list, which they did do with James on Friday, and there are ramifications for being put on that list. None of them are good. One, you don't get an accrued or credited season, particularly if they put you on now, because then you're done for the year. If you go on after the cut down, then could come off in a normal non-COVID year, but you're out 6 weeks at a minimum. You could come off, but in this case, Ja'Waun James can't. So he doesn't get an accrued season for free agency, which he really doesn't need because he already has 4. Once you have 4 of those, you don't need another one. Doesn't get a credited season for salary purposes or benefit purposes, which is more important. So that means nothing goes towards his pension. Nothing goes towards his severance pay this year, which is another benefit you get at the end of the year. There's a certain amount per year, depending upon how long your career is, that you get in severance pay, lump sum payment when you retire. Like Phillip Rivers retired this year, he's got $285,000 in severance coming for 17 years, but doesn't get the credit this year, which would be $30,000 for severance. More importantly, you have to pay your salary if you put on the non-football illness injury list. Don't have to pay for your medical care if they don't want to. Now, if you get hurt at the facility under paragraph 9 of the NFL player contract, team is responsible for stuff like that. And paragraph 9 basically says, unless this contract specifically presides otherwise, if players injured in the performance of his services under this contract and promptly report such injury to club physician or trainer, then player will receive such medical and hospital care during the term of this contract as long as club physician may deem necessary, and will continue to receive his yearly salary for so long during the season of injury only for no subsequent period covered by this contract, as player is physically unavailable to services required of him by this contract because of such injury. That's your salary is guaranteed by paragraph 9, in the case of an injury, performing services of your contract, working out under the direction, supervision, or control, the team qualifies for that. James, in his case, is supposed to make $9.85 million this year. He opted out last year voluntarily because of COVID, which you were allowed to do. Got the $150,000 advance. His contract told, so it was running through 2022, now runs through 2023. Had a fully guaranteed $9.85 million salary. Was 10, but he got the $150 advance. Has $11 million salary next year, $5 million guaranteed for injury only, fully guaranteed on the 5th day of the 2022 league year. Now, there's something called defaults in a player contract, which can void guarantees. So, since he had the guarantee, if he didn't default, then they have to pay him. But because of how the default language reads, that guarantee is gone, which puts him in a position where they don't have to pay him. And for typical default language is more or less the same for each team. There's some variances. Some are more onerous than others. But basically, if you refuse to play or practice, leave the team without written consent in any years of the contract, if you have a breach of paragraph 3 of the player contract as a result of hazardous activities which involve a significant risk of personal injury that are non-football in nature, some list specific things like skydiving, hang gliding, mountain gliding, climbing, auto racing, motorcycling, scuba diving, skiing, etc. You get suspended by NFL policy, whether it's personal conduct, substance abuse, or performance-enhancing drugs, conduct detrimental. You are in default. So that's going to put also next year's guarantee in jeopardy as well, the $5 million. The injury guarantee is not going to apply because the injury guarantee only applies to injuries suffered while playing or practicing for the club. So the injury guarantee won't work for him next year. Skill and guarantee doesn't kick in if it still survived, which I don't believe it does, until next year. So now he's got an unsecured $5 million next year. Some people have said that this could trigger give back of a signing bonus. I've never heard of a situation where a team has come back to try to get somebody's signing bonus for working out away from the facility. Under signing bonus forfeiture or recoupment is controlled by Article 4, Section 9 of the CBA. But before we get to that, we referenced paragraph 3, which was referenced in the default, which talks about will not play football, engage in activities related to football otherwise is may involve significant risk of personal injury. So working out away from the facility typically qualifies for that. Now, if you're talking about Article 4, Section 9 of the CBA, there's a list of things which are considered appropriate defaults for when you can come back and get signing bonus. So some of them are the same as in the guarantees. Refuse to play or practice, withhold your services basically. If you are suspended under a policy, then signing bonus forfeiture can be triggered. If you retire, but typically it doesn't mention anything for what we're talking about in terms of give back for signing bonus. I think that's something that is a stretch. It says, what does say, unavailable team due to non-football injury that results in material breach of paragraph 3. So yeah, they could, but still think that's a stretch. I think that's one of the NFLPA would file a grievance just because they wouldn't want that precedent set. Now, this thing did take another turn for the worst in terms of relationships with the NFLPA and the NFL, just because of a memo that the NFL sent out, because players were, as I said, Mahomes was surprised, and some media members were surprised as well of the ramifications of what happens when you work out away from a team facility. And specifically, it's this memo, and some clubs inquired about it as well, that injuries sustained while a player is working out his own in a location other than NFL facility are considered non-football injuries outside the scope of the typical skill injury cap guarantee. Such injuries also not protected by the protections found in paragraph 9 the NFL player contract, meaning there's no contractual obligation to provide salary continuation during the year in which the injury was sustained. Then they toot their horn about why he should work out at the facility. By contrast, injury sustained by a player working out of club facility specifically authorized by his club are considered football-related injuries, and you're entitled to payment of paragraph 5 salary, medical care, pension credit, if you're unable to perform services for 3 or more regular season games due to injury. It's also postseason games for pension credit also apply. And any other benefits such as injury protection, which provide payments for the player in the seasons following the season of occurring injury. So Achilles injury typically isn't career-ending, so the injury protection probably will not apply. In this case, then the NFLPA had a response. That the NFL was being gutless, trying to wiggle out a contract and using this as a scare tactic. Now, we've seen in plenty of occasions that teams ultimately will pay something in a non-football injury situation. We had one last year, Michael Pilardi, punter for the Panthers last year, now after watching football team, tore his ACL working out sometime before training camp, was scheduled to make $1.84 million. They decided to pay him $500,000. So it's not lost that James won't get paid something, but he could end up being made an example of because of this dispute with the NFL and NFLPA to drive a point home. Denver doesn't have to make a decision on when to pay him now. They can wait up until training camp to do it, but it would not surprise me if they pay him nothing. What some people don't know is if you have an injury in college and you're unable to play, yeah, it's a football injury, but not for NFL purposes. For NFL purposes, that is still considered a non-football injury, and we've seen that come into play in drafts over the past 10 years or so. One being Marcus Lattimore had that gruesome knee injury in, I think it was the 2012 season. He's a draft pick in 2013, I think a 4th-round pick of the Niners. Never played a down of football, never passed a physical. Was put on a non-football illness injury list, and was paid what's called a split amount in your contract. 4th-round picks have a split amount. There's a CBA amount for a minimum salary you get if you're not on the 50-man roster, and that was his case. So his split was $288,000 the first year, and the second year was $303,000 was what he was making before he retired late in the year. Jake Butt got hurt playing for Michigan in the bowl game. I think it was Orange Bowl, if I believe, and was a 5th-round pick in 2017. Probably would have been a 2nd or 3rd-round pick. Made the split. Then you've had other cases where guys, I'm going to digress for a minute, weren't draft picks before I get back to one. Like Isaiah Wilson last year, the troubled 1st-round pick from the Titans that they traded to the Dolphins, who promptly cut him because he obviously wasn't going to do what he needed to do, which was the case in Tennessee. Guy, a disaster in terms of being a professional. Went on non-football illness injury list twice last year. First time they paid him, second time they didn't. 2019, Trent Williams held out partially for money and partially because he didn't agree with the medical treatment that the Washington football team gave him because of the cancerous growth on his head. When he finally decided to report to camp in late October, they couldn't find a helmet which was going to fit properly. Washington put him on the non-football injury illness list, didn't pay him his $10.85 million salary, the bulk of which is about $6 million. Now, one case, Dallas Cowboys, 2016. Jalen Smith was playing for Notre Dame. He was a 2nd-round pick in 2016, had that career-threatening knee injury in a bowl game. And they paid his salary in full in 2016, 2nd-round pick. There was a time when Cowboys did not treat 2nd-round picks this way that I know from personal experience. We represented a 2nd-round pick. It was us first getting started a long time ago. Jimmy Smith, who ended up catching over 850 passes for like over 12,000 yards, 7 straight 1,000-yard years, all with the Jaguars. But he was second round pick in 1992 by the Dallas Cowboys. Rookie year was lost. Broke his leg first couple days in training camp. And you could come out for IR after 4 games back then. And for anyone, basically played special teams the rest of the year. Second year, was complaining of stomach problems. Played in the preseason game against the Oilers. He'd been complaining about stomach problems for a couple of days. And played well. There's a particular play where he caught a pass, got slammed to the turf, fell on the ball, and was clutching his stomach afterwards. Complained a couple of days later, stomach still bothering him. Then has to have an emergency appendectomy. If things go wrong, there are complications. And he ends up having this procedure, an ileostomy performed on him, where his bodily waste functions were performed through a bag. I remember being on a conference call with Jerry Jones. This is early in Jerry Jones' tenure of owning the Cowboys, and I was a little taken aback because I didn't know anything about the non-football injury list until this. And Jerry offered to pay him $100,000. The salary was like $350,000, I think. And I remember Jerry saying, I got nothing from him last year. I'm going to get nothing from him this year. Take it or leave it. We didn't think that was fair, particularly given he had told the Cowboys about his stomach problems, and they kind of ignored him, and it ended up coming to full-blown complications where his career was in jeopardy. He ended up going from like 200 pounds, like 165, 170 pounds. Ultimately, obviously, he recovered, but we filed a grievance. I'd videotaped, yes, it's not long ago, videotaped the game, and we introduced that specific play into evidence. And the arbitrator bought our argument that this was football related, and Jimmy got, obviously, his full salary and the benefits associated with one on IR. Cowboys' career was over because it was cut the next year. Dallas has come a long way from how they treat guys on the non-football injury illness list. Worst list for you to be on. Now, one last thing with James is that this kind of sets it up where if they want to get rid of him, they can, because the guarantees are going to be gone for next year as well. He's got $9 million of bonus proration, 2021, $3 million, 2021, 22, and 23. So they want to cut him, then it'd be $3 million after June 1 or next year. There's $3 million dead money this year. Not have to pay anything. $6 million next year. So we'll see if they decide to pay him anything at all. I remember Philadelphia Eagles. There was a guy, Mike Patterson. I don't know what year it was, mid-2000s, like 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm not sure what year it was. But that decade had brain surgery. They paid him something, but didn't pay him his full salary. And I was like, well, wait a minute. He had brain surgery, no fault of his own, pay him his full salary. And then there was another case. Lawrence Tynes got a staph infection, MRSA, at the Bucs facility. In, I think, 2013, initially they weren't going to pay him anything, put him on non-football illness list, but got such bad publicity they decided to actually pay him. So we'll see what they decide to do, the Denver Broncos in the Ja'Waun James situation. But given he opted out last year, has not lived up to what they thought when they signed him, even when he did play. Now you have this injury. I suspect that he's going to be made an example of, I hope I'm wrong, in this NFLPA fight.
This episode is brought to you by Klarna. There's shopping, and then there's Klarna. Shopping is hard. You gotta get up, go to the store, and then comes paying all at once. For instance, imagine you see the perfect leather jacket hanging in a store window. You know you shouldn't get it, but it's there, beckoning you in with its rugged coolness. With Klarna, you can shop smarter, not harder. Just fire up the Klarna app and boom, you have the power to split that one big jacket purchase into 4 little ones, interest-free. It's like having a personal shopper who understands budgeting. Because how you pay should make you feel as cool as that new leather jacket does. But that's not all. In the Klarna app, you can browse curated wish lists and deals that are updated daily. Save items you love and get alerts when the price drops. And earn rewards on every purchase when you join their free rewards program. You deserve to shop like a VIP without the annual fee. Get the Klarna app today. That's Klarna. California resident loans made or arranged pursuant to a California finance lender's law license.
What's up? It's Mike Jones from the Football Jones podcast. I know you're enjoying your time with Inside the Cap, but once you're done, I want to invite you to come over and check out my podcast. Each week, we take a deep dive into some of the most pressing topics around the NFL. High-profile guests from the coach, player, and front office ranks, as well as the top league insiders. Check out the Football Jones podcast, another fine product brought to you by Empire Media.
Decisions on fifth-year options had to be made by May 3rd, and the number of fifth-year options that were exercised didn't change compared to previous years, despite there were some subtle changes in how fifth-year options work with this 2018 first-round class. That now, when you exercise the option, that they're fully guaranteed as soon as you pick it up, instead of just guaranteed for injury, and then you could wait until the following first day of the league year for the skill and injury guarantee to kick in. So you could do what the Titans did to Adoree Jackson this year. Get rid of the option, have no obligation if the guy's still healthy. The Washington football team did that years ago with RG3. Kept him on ice the whole year when Kirk Cousins was first establishing himself as a starting quarterback. Didn't even activate him, except I think one game, just so the injury part wouldn't become a issue. And now salaries are different. Used to be top 10 picks, got the transition tag for their position, and everyone else picks 11 through 32, third through 25th highest paid salaries at their position. Now it's kind of performance based, where 2 Pro Bowls original ballot, no matter where you're picked in the round, it's franchise tender. 1 Pro Bowl original ballot in your first 3 years, transition tag. If you have 70% play time in 2 of the first 3 seasons, or average at least 50% play time in all 3 seasons, then it's third through 20th salaries. And if you don't do any of that, then it's third through 25th. So that kind of changed the calculus a little bit. So let's look at some of the options. There are 21 which are actually picked up. And that doesn't include Colton Miller, whose would have been picked up, but he signed a contract. He's the first guy to get a contract done for a 2018 first-round pick. $54.15 million on a 3-year extension, $42.5 million in guarantees at the beginning of April. So you had 21 picked up. 31 were eligible. Josh Rosen wasn't, because he got cut by the Dolphins after the trade from the 49ers. And that's in line with the number of options you had picked up in previous years. There were a couple of interesting cases to me. Saquon Barkley, for one, that his option number is really low, $7.217 million, whereas his cap number this year is a little over $10 million. So it's actually, cap-wise, a break next year for the Giants. And part of the reason is for running backs, you take a guy that high, second. The franchise transition tag numbers for running backs have been going down steadily because it's a cap percentage average. It's not the previous top 5, the average top 10 salaries of the previous year. It's over a 5-year period. So running back salaries for a while it cratered. They're starting to go back up. But 2017, that 5th-year option number for a top 10 pick who was a running back was going to be $9.84 million. In Ezekiel Elliott's, if he'd played on the 5th-year option, which he didn't, it was going to be $9.099 million, which was 2019, was the exercise year. And then this year for Saquon, it's dropped even more. So perfect storm for him. Panthers, since they didn't take a quarterback with the 8th pick and went with J.C. Horn, they were going to exercise that option for Sam Darnold at $18.85 million. So it's basically, he's got this year, next year to prove that he is a legitimate quarterback. He's got a new lease on life. Marcus Davenport, I was kind of surprised they exercised his option. The Saints, $9.553 million, fully guaranteed. Lost the starting job to Trey Hendrickson because of an elbow injury, which sidelined him the first 4 games of the regular season, couldn't get it back. They gave up 2 first-round picks to get him, move up to get him, trade with Green Bay in 2018. So maybe they, instead of cutting their losses, decided, you know what, we're all in on him. Leighton Vander Esch had durability concerns dating back to Boise State with the neck, then had the neck problems after a great rookie year, hasn't been healthy. Talented guy, $9.145 million, drafting Micah Parsons, even though they said didn't impact it, probably made it a lot easier not to pick up the 5th-year option. They say they want him there long term, but if I'm Leighton Vander Esch, you don't pick up my option. I play well this year. I can alleviate the injury concern a little bit. I'm out. I'm like, you could have had me for the 5th year. I'm testing the market. If someone wants to pay me, you can watch my career progress someplace else. Then we had Hayden Hurst. As soon as Kyle Pitts was drafted, this one was never getting picked up. They got him in a trade to replace Austin Hooper, who left in free agency for the Browns. He did okay, but Kyle Pitts could be a once-in-a-generation talented tight end. $5.428 million. Not picking it up for a guy who's not going to see the field nearly as much now. 2 that I thought might get picked up but didn't. Terrell Edmonds, Steelers safety. They're picking up Minka Fitzpatrick, so picking up 2 safety ones. His was $6.753 million. Didn't pick that one up, even though he played basically 90% of the defensive plays ever since he was drafted. And the Titans have history of not picking up 5th-year options or keeping them. Jack Conklin, Corey Davis, then this year Adoree Jackson. They didn't pick up Rashaan Evans for $9.735 million. Now, we saw Frank Ragnow, whose option was picked up, get a deal done, which now we have 2 guys who signed deals in this first-round draft class. He had a $12.657 million option, 4-year extension, highest paid center in NFL history, $13.5 million per year, $25.5 million fully guaranteed, $40 million full in overall guarantees, all new benchmarks for centers. So typically, you're going to have anywhere from 3 to 6 guys sign first-round picks, sign deals, and not play the 4th year of the rookie contract. 2 quarterbacks are probably going to sign deals, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Expect those to be in the Dak Prescott range, $40 million per year. Probably be where those deals average. We'll see if someone can get to $100 million in fully guaranteed at signing, which has never happened. Guarantees will probably be somewhere between 120 and 140 million. Baker Mayfield, interesting one. Would the Browns do something with him or Denzel Ward? They made Myles Garrett the first $25 million per year non-quarterback last year. If I'm Baker Mayfield, I don't necessarily have to be in a rush. I let those guys go first, knowing that a rising tide lift all boats. If they want to do me, he played great second half of the year, overcame the sophomore slump he had in 2019, and wasn't playing all that well at the beginning of the year. If they don't do it now, and he plays like he did second half of 2020 season, it's going to cost them more money. So we'll see about that one. Quentin Nelson, the Colts are budgeting to try to get him done. It's in the budget. I wait for Brandon Scherff. I'm in no hurry. He's playing on a second franchise tag with the Washington football team, $18.036 million. He's my floor if he gets a deal done. Joe Thuney raised the bar for guards in free agency, went to the Chiefs from the Patriots. $80 million, 5 years, $60 million average, $46.89 million in total guarantees. I'm looking to just fundamentally change guard salaries if I'm Quentin Nelson. Some teams will eventually do deals with guys, like the Packers with Jair Alexander, but not this year most likely. Steelers still haven't done T.J. Watt from last year, who's playing on the 5th-year option this year. So Minka Fitzpatrick, you're not quite on the radar screen yet. Calvin Ridley has another year like this year, 90 catches for almost 1,400 yards, came close to double digits in touchdowns. they're going to have to pay him well over $20 million per year. They're already doing that with Julio Jones, who's 32 years old, coming off an injury-plagued year. Probably won't be there next year. They could get traded after June 1st. That gives him more leverage if Julio's not around. So those are probably the ones which have the best chance of getting done this year. Didn't see Colton Miller being the first one. Didn't see Frank Ragnow being the second one. Bradley Chubb, Broncos, maybe. Pro Bowler, pass rusher. Ain't going to be cheap. Pass rushing market this year in free agency, not where I expect it to be. $17 million was the max on the average per year. Didn't get to Trey Flowers' money 2 years ago, which was $18 million. $56 million in overall guarantees, 40 fully guaranteed at signing for Trey Flowers. I'd expect anything for Bradley Chubb to be over $20 million per year. Von Miller's coming back from missing last year with the ankle problem. He's in the final year of his contract, so we'll see if they do anything with Miller, if he gets off to a good start, and would that set the floor for Bradley Chubb as well. But
this episode is brought to you by Simply by Frito-Lay. You have enough on your plate, but now there's one less thing to overthink with Simply by Frito-Lay. It's your favorite Frito-Lay snacks with ingredients to feel good about, like Simply Blue Corn Tostitos, Sea Salted Ruffles, and White Cheddar Cheetos Puffs. All made with no artificial flavors or colors. So enjoy what you love and look for Simply brand snacks online or at a store near you.
Hey there, it's John Keim of the John Keim Report podcast. I'm glad you're enjoying the Inside the Cap podcast with Joel Corey. When you're done, I invite you to listen to my podcast. Twice a week, my guests and I discuss the Washington football team and the NFL. The show features numerous NFL insiders, former and current players and executives, and taps into the insight gained in my 25-plus years covering this franchise. Check out the John Keim Report, another fine product offered by Empire Media.
that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Inside the Cap. Don't forget, you can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel. That is CORRYJOEL. And also read my Agents Take column at cbssports.com. Thanks for listening. Goodbye, and we'll see you next time.